All right, so thanks everyone for joining us today. As we walk through this this new document that we've prepared for Sacramental Preparation Processes. So this was recently written through collaboration of the offices of Catholic Schools, Divine Worship, and Lifelong Formation. So the three of us from those offices are here today to walk you through the document. I'm Deborah Brakey with the Office of Lifelong Formation. And then we also have with us Melissa Link from Catholic Schools and Todd Williamson from Divine Worship. So we'll each be speaking about various parts of the document as we go along. And we hope that through the presentation, some of your questions will be answered. But in the event that they're not, we're also going to have some Q&A time at the end of the presentation, where you can either ask your questions out loud or type them in the chat, and we'll try to address as much as we can in our time together. We are recording today's presentation. I've already started that, so we are recording, and that you can share the link then with those who were not able to see it, that wanted to come to it, or if you want to review it again, or share it with other people on your pastoral staff as well. So thank you again for joining us, and we're going to start our time together in prayer. Let me get to the presentation. Give me 1 second. There we go.
Let's remember that we are always in the presence of a God who has called us by name. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Faithful and ever-living God, in baptism, you make us a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people of your own possession. Be with us as we look to this ministry of initiation, and bless us with an openness to your Holy Spirit. Fill us with zeal, passion, and love for accompanying your people in their journey of falling in love with your Son. For you live and reign forever and ever. Amen. May Almighty God bless us, protect us from all evil, and bring us to everlasting life. Amen.
Amen.
Hello, everyone. It's good to see some faces that I recognize, and others that I might not have been able to meet in person before. If not, my name is Todd Williamson. I'm the director for the Office for Divine Worship. And just as we start here, a couple of points elaborating on what Deb talked about right before our prayer. Go ahead, Deb. This resource, and really this is a walk through the resource. As Deb said, we're going to try to answer as many questions as we can. My guess is, and my experience in these town halls, is we're not going to get to every question. But if that is the case and it's yours, call us. Call me, call Deb, call Melissa. If you have concerns or issues that aren't addressed. So this resource and the recommendation for the processes addresses, as we know, two main groups. Those students who we find out either through a process of interviewing or by surprise, because that happens both ways in parishes. Students who we find out are not baptized at all in any denomination. And secondly, children who come to us who are baptized validly, Christian baptized, baptism, but not in the Catholic Church. And in that, developing this resource, which, by the way, is not new. Nothing in this resource is new. There were a couple of comments made in the questions that you answered for registration. And a couple times this resource was referred to as new guidelines. These have all been part of the Archdiocesan policies and procedures for decades. We have simply compiled them and developed some recommendations on how to work with them. These primarily for parish Rcia, for parish catechetical programs and school leadership. I probably for most, we gave, as you see, attention to how to communicate with the families, because sometimes their intentions need clarification. Sometimes they seek the sacraments simply so that their children don't feel excluded, or they seek the sacrament because they think, well, that's just part of the process, not seeing it as a part of living a sacramental life. Okay, Deb. She noted, Deb, before the prayer, that the three offices did collaborate, and the three offices worked for quite a while in putting this together. Tim Weisky, the director of mine and Deb's department, the Department for Parish Vitality and Mission, and then Melissa, who you'll hear from in just a moment, Deb and I, and Kevin Foy, the director of the Office of Lifelong Formation. Once we put this together in its last draft, we sent it to the Episcopal Council. So all the bishops looked at it. There were just a few questions raised. One of them was, hey, let Canonical Affairs also review this. And so from the bishops, we sent it to Canonical Affairs, the Office for Canonical Services, and they saw it in line with existing policies and procedures as well. So that just gives you a little background as to how this came about. Okay, Deb. The questions that were asked were very helpful to us, just to see what we would want the content to focus on here. And we're going to look at some of those throughout this webinar, this town hall. What are the challenges that you face in initiating these two groups of children? What are your successes? And there are successes. There are parishes who really are doing this well. I would ask that if you are a parish where you do the initiation of children well, in the chat, put your name, put your contact information. You can be of service to each other. And then finally, what questions you have about the resource and what is presented in it. A little bit of background as to how this came about, and moving forward where we'll go the rest of our time together.
Okay, so these are just a snapshot of some of the challenges that came across that we thought it might be helpful just to share, so you know that the challenges you face, others are facing as well. So the first one, differences between parish programs, the format, the number of classes, the requirements or expectations. As we know, things vary from parish to parish. Another concern is, how to explain the importance of this to parents and helping them understand why there's a process, and it can't be just, a quick short program like the third bullet point says. There's a certain sense of urgency a lot of time with parents. Another challenge is maybe the lack of commitment and engagement from parents. And then challenges of identifying the children. From the parish perspective, someone had said, they just keep popping up all year long, right? So kids will come in at various times of the program. And then on the school end of things, there was a comment that they're finding more and more students who are unreligious entering the school, which teachers are voicing as a challenge. Another challenge is that each case or each student is unique and requires particular pastoral care. So there's a challenge there when you have, this is our program, but every case is unique. So people are struggling with that as well. And then involving and including children and families who are not preparing for a sacrament. So after a student has been initiated, but is still in the classroom and not necessarily preparing for a sacrament, but the challenge is there. And then another comment was that, the pastor may not want the initiation process and will just baptize students at any time. So there's challenges there, which we recognize. Also finding appropriate materials. We have a few recommendations later in the presentation to help with that. And like Todd said, you can call us anytime for help with that. And then the last one that we put on here is, some comments that Todd had referenced, that the new guidelines are making me nervous. And just to reiterate, and we'll probably say it over and over today, this is nothing new. It's just some recommendations from us to help you implement what already has been standing. So what we're going to do is just kind of, you can see this is the table of contents of the document. So I've highlighted, in blue, the first 3 sections. We'll go through that first, and then we'll just kind of move through the table of contents relatively quickly, just to walk you through it.
Great.
So, go ahead.
Thanks very much, Deb. And good afternoon, everybody who's joining us on this afternoon's call. It's really, really good to be here with you on a Monday afternoon at the end of February. So on behalf of all of us, thanks for all that you do for our schools and for our parishes and for our students and families. We know it's a lot of hard work, and we know how much energy you put into it in your own ministries. My name is Melissa Link, and I serve as the Director of Catholic Mission and Culture for the Office of Catholic Schools. It's really a privilege to be here with you this afternoon and to work in partnership with Deb and with Todd to support all of you as you lead faith formation for our students in our school and in our parish communities. Deb, we can just bring up all of the other points on this slide. We'll just kind of talk through things and people can read through as we chat through some of these bullet points. But primarily, I want to share with you as we dive into this new resource that what we're pleased to share with you today actually came about as a result of some conversations that I've had over the last few years with a few of our Catholic school principals at their local council meetings. We know, as Deb pointed out in the previous slide, that our schools are becoming more and more religiously diverse each year. When we're open to that, certainly all are welcome in our school and in our parish programs. But as families enroll in our schools, we can't assume anymore that all of our students who are coming to us have received the sacrament of baptism. And of course, we know that it's necessary that children be baptized if they want to participate in subsequent sacraments and be prepared for penance and for Eucharist and for confirmation. So over the course of the last few years, there have been several principals who've requested some guidance about how they can effectively and sensitively inquire about incoming students' baptism and really just understand ways from a leadership perspective that they can support families whose child might not be baptized, but the family's curious and perhaps they want to learn more about what it means to be baptized and to be part of the larger Catholic community. What we don't want is for a child who isn't baptized to get to 2nd grade and then start formation for sacraments in 2nd grade, only for the teacher in the school to discover kind of too late in the game that the student needs a different pathway for sacramental prep that actually starts with baptism. This has actually happened in recent years in our schools on a couple of occasions where it was assumed that an incoming child, either in preschool or kindergarten and 1st grade, was baptized and they weren't. And communication with the family didn't happen around what sacramental prep means. And by the time they get to 2nd grade and they've moved through part of the sacramental prep with their classmates, it's kind of like having to put the toothpaste back into the tube once this realization happens and conversations need to happen about how a different pathway for formation needs to take place with that child. It can be really disappointing for that child who's been prepared for their classmates to be told that they can't participate with their peers in receiving the sacrament. And for parents, they feel like in many cases their child's being discriminated against or they're being unfairly excluded from something because parents also aren't understanding what it means to be properly prepared for a sacrament, and that starts with baptism. So what we're sharing with you this afternoon is a resource that if you choose to use it, we're hopeful can assist you as school and parish leaders in having more open conversations about baptism with new families on the front end to establish some common understanding about baptism and what it means to be prepared for subsequent sacraments, and really just to sincerely invite new families to discern baptism for their children and for themselves as a whole family if they'd like to consider that and be part of the larger parish community. So we can move on. Great. And then just take a look at the introduction. So as you're taking a look at the resource, and I don't know if it's been linked in the chat or perhaps you have it from an earlier communication, as Todd pointed out, Please know that what's being offered here today does not at all change current archdiocesan policies for baptism and sacramental prep. So if you came to today's meeting like concerned or with questions that there's some policy changes going on, I would invite you to take a deep breath and let it out, because we are absolutely not talking about any new or changed policies today. Rather, what we are talking about is an optional resource that you are invited to use as school and parish leaders to assist with communication internally amongst yourselves at the local site, and then also to help with communication with new families about their child's baptism. So ultimately, what we want is for our schools and parishes to be abundantly super welcoming for new families. What we don't want is any miscommunications or assumptions on our part that could lead to confusion for new families or new families feeling excluded from anything. The goal is to be upfront in our conversations about baptism and really what the sacraments mean to all of us as Catholics and as a Catholic community. So hopefully this is a tool that can assist with that and help invite new families into a life of discipleship that they might not have considered for themselves or for their children before. Great. So roles and responsibilities. When it comes to preparation and administration of sacraments, families and schools and parishes all have a very different and distinct role to play. As Deb just pulled up on the left, first and foremost, the role of parents is absolutely critical in the formation of their children. Before anyone or anything else, parents are definitely the first teachers of their children. And that's why it's so important for schools and for parishes to share resources and to collaborate around ways to engage parents as the faith leaders of their families. If parents are knowledgeable about their faith and they feel supported and resourced by their school and parish communities, it's going to make life a lot easier for all of us. At the end of the day, we in school and in parishes can have students at our beck and call for 1 to 2 hours a week or up to 7 hours a day. But regardless, at the end of that day or at the end of that week, we are sending them home to their parents. And parents are, as they should be, the first teachers of their children. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see some roles for principals and pastors and catechetical leaders. So specifically, the role of faith formation programs, and this includes that of Catholic schools, is to prepare students to receive sacraments. Schools and RE programs use curriculum standards and approved textbooks and other instructional resources to help ensure student readiness for the sacraments of penance, Eucharist, and confirmation. Schools do not provide baptism formation, and schools do not administer sacraments. This is the role of parishes. And this is why it's so important for principals and pastors and catechetical leaders to really be tight in their communication about new students' sacramental history. Everyone's got to be on the same page, and that includes communicating with families about how they can understand and support the proper formation pathway for their child. So if you find it helpful, we're hopeful that this new resource can open some doors to formalize this shared internal communication for your parish and school community.
Okay, and then this is just a continuation of those roles and responsibilities. So you can see on the left-hand side with the pastor and catechetical leaders. So parish-specific roles and responsibilities is to be aware of the policies and procedures of the archdiocese, to provide the clear process for the child's baptism or reception into the full communion of the church, and then to make the parish processes known to the parish school. As Melissa said, this is the responsibility of the parish, is to have the baptismal preparation and catechumenate program. And then on the right-hand side with the school and faith formation programs, to work together to review the sacramental background of children when they enroll in either program, to seek direction from the parish, again, regarding the catechumenal process, and then also, of course, to accompany families through proper discernment in sacramental preparation. The next section of the document refers to the recommendations for principals, catechetical leaders, and pastors, and then also determining the process, which involves a lot of the policies and procedures. So we'll kind of take a deeper dive specifically in the determining the proper process section of the document. So in the recommendation section of the document, we have to work with families to help them fully understand both the process and the nature of the sacraments as sacred, discerned moments on a lifelong journey of faith. The first step in the document that we recommend is having a sacramental information form for students. Many of you already do this, some may not. So what we've included within the document is, you can see on the right-hand side, these images, some hyperlinks to a form that you can use if you'd like to for sacramental information intake for students. It's a Word document that is editable. The top image shows you that when you open it up from the document, the hyperlink, there's an enable editing button, up here at the top right-hand side. If you click on that, then you'll be able to edit this for your use. This is completely optional for parishes and schools. You may already have something, but if you don't, you might want to use this or adapt it for your needs. From that intake form, you'll be able to discern which parents to contact and discuss the family's spiritual information needs, and then also at the same time inform them of the parish sacramental preparation process. So again, this is a way to anticipate early who to have these conversations with. And then after that point, after speaking with parents, then refer them to the parish. The next steps in this recommendation section of the document talks about discerning the means of documented communication. So what printed overview of the parish process might you have that you could actually share with parents, so they have something in their hands that explains clearly how things work at your parish? This has been a concern that popped up in the survey is, how do we communicate it all to parents? They don't understand. It's hard to, go through the fine details. Well, if you have something printed, that may help them understand the process a little more. And then next would be to communicate to parents that the readiness for the sacrament of baptism or reception into the church is more important than a hurried reception of the sacrament in hopes of grade level reception and additional sacraments with peers. So again, the more conversations you have with parents and the earlier you start those conversations, the more likely they will begin to appreciate that the readiness for the sacrament is more important than just a hurried reception. And then also pastors should be involved in those conversations. They are ultimately responsible for helping families and assessing the readiness of the older children for reception of the sacrament of baptism. So pastors are a key in this process as well. And then also note that baptism or reception into full communion is to take place at the home parish after suitable formation for children and their parents. Now, Todd is going to walk us through determining the proper process.
It helps to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Before anything else, just a couple of quick comments here. Melissa, you really kind of hit on it, I think. I think what's key in the area of initiation for any parish is that first and foremost, that there needs to be a shared vision of initiation. And that vision needs to be shared on the same page with the principal, the catechetical leader, the pastor, and the Rcia coordinator. So I would encourage all of those ministry leaders to really have a conversation. What is this parish's vision of initiating children into the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ? Because that's what is at the heart of all of this. Students come to us, and then we need to discern what is the best process for them. For children under the age of reason, which the church says is around 7 years old. Just a quick note, I've had experience in the parish where there was a 6-year-old who we discerned in the leadership of the parish, those who hold the vision of initiation, we discerned that this 6-year-old was of a stage, a level, a point of development where she could certainly handle formation for full initiation. And so even though she was 6, she was initiated with a catechumenal experience, according to the Rcia. Similarly, I've known and had experience of an 9-year-old who was just not discerned to be at a point, a level. So the church says it's around 7 years. That really does take discernment on all our parts. The school principal, the catechetical leader, the pastor, the Rcia director. We know it's determined that they are not, that they are below the age of reason and would not benefit from a catechumenate experience. And so they're baptized according to the rite of baptism of children, of infants. One of the things that I think we need to just be aware of and have in our minds is that in many ways, our church can be a bit schizophrenic. And one of those areas is initiation. Parents bring their infant, their young child, to be initiated, and we baptize them. And then they complete that initiation in later years. That's when they come to us as infants. Someone comes to us as an adult, and they're baptized, they're initiated according to a completely different process, the rite of Christian initiation of adults. And so we really have only two means. Baptism of children, where it's just baptism, they're under the age of reason, they're infants, or they're baptized according to the adult rite. And so in that sense, the church sees anybody above the age of reason in this case, in this situation, as an adult. And so they would be initiated according to the rite of Christian initiation of adults and adapted for children. So that's kind of the simplest, I guess you could say, process that we would determine if they're under the age of reason, they're baptized according to the rite of baptism of children, where it's just baptism and they complete that initiation later. Someone comes to us above the age of reason, 8, 9, 10, 12, 15. They are initiated according to the Rcia. Okay, Deb. And that is a process of formation in which the catechesis is only one element. And so the Rcia is the process that by which a person is formed to be fully initiated into the Paschal mystery of Christ. Okay, Deb. It's full initiation. The person is baptized. That baptism is confirmed right then, right there at the same celebration. And then all of that culminates in the reception of the Eucharist. What the catechumenal process looks like may vary. That's one of the greatest attributes of the Rcia, is that it is highly adaptable. And so according to a parish's resource, according to the parish's vision of initiation, according to the parish's ability, that catechumenal process that an unbaptized student would go through can vary and can be adapted to all the needs of both the families, and the school or the parish. We have some resources in regard to the Rcia that we'll show you in just a minute. For a baptized non-Catholic, it's a similar, related process, but a different celebration. A baptized non-Catholic child does not make a profession of faith. I hear that term used often, and there really is no such thing as a profession of faith, as a rite, as a ritual. The rite is the reception into the full communion of the Catholic Church. It's a sacramental celebration. It's not just a perfunctory recite the creed and that makes you Catholic. That's inaccurate. This is a sacramental celebration. Go ahead, Deb. It's celebrated within a mass. Go ahead. The candidate does profess the creed with the assembly, yes, but there's an added line that the candidate must say. They would profess the creed with the assembly, and then there is the added line, I believe and profess all that the Holy Church believes, teaches, and proclaims to be revealed by God. And then the priest makes an act of reception. There is a formal and ritual act by which he receives the student into the Catholic Church. He says, Mary, the Lord receives you into the Catholic Church. His loving kindness has led you here. That's what makes the person Catholic. Not that they profess the creed, but that they profess the creed with the added line, and the priest ritually receives them into the communion of the Catholic Church. That person then their baptism is confirmed there at that celebration by the priest, who has delegation. He doesn't need special permission, doesn't need special delegation. And then the candidate, that whole initiation is ratified. It culminates in the celebration of the Eucharist then and there. That's what reception into the full communion of the Catholic Church is. It's not just reciting the creed, but it is sacramental in its essence. Go ahead, Deb. Here's just, we mentioned some resources, and we can put this into the link. You can Google any of these, readily available. Our own LTP publishes the Guide to Adapting the RCIA for Children. There is a book that was written in actually the late 90s. It is still one of the best pastoral, practical explorations of the initiation of children. It was done by Bob Duggan and Maureen Kelly. Many of you may know Maureen. And then Rcia Benzinger has a great resource for the initiation of children in the rite of Christian initiation adapted for children, called Young Apprentices. That's you can find on their website. So we wanted to give some quick possible resources for you, and these would be three, I think, really good ones to begin with.
Great. Okay, and then the document continues with sections 6 and 7, guidance on how to make catechesis inclusive and relevant for children who are not preparing for a sacrament, and then for children and families who are participating in the children's catechumenate. So, how to make catechesis inclusive and relevant. In this section, we recommend providing an inclusive and relevant catechesis for children who receive their sacraments outside of the typical school or faith formation program, because this will help them to feel welcomed into the school or parish community, engage in sacramental preparation and formation activities with their peers, and also be encouraged in ongoing spiritual maturation outside of the catechumenate. So within the recommendations, as we've already stated, discuss with families that readiness for the sacraments is more important than simply receiving the sacraments with peers. And then also communicating the value of the catechumenate process, and that participation does not mean exclusion from grade level experiences with peers. And I think those resources that Todd just mentioned will help you with, communicating the value of the catechumenate process. Within those resources, you can find some of the language that would help you, as you're speaking with parents. So, Oh, okay, Melissa's gonna walk us through this one.
Great. Thanks, Deb and Todd. We can just power all those things up on the screen and let people browse through them. But just to dovetail onto what Todd and Deb just shared, I think it's really good to recall that whenever somebody receives a sacrament, it should be an experience of truly genuine, joyful celebration, no matter when or at what age a person happens to be. So as we've been discussing, it's really critical to engage families as soon as possible in this process for their children. Because if parents understand and feel included in the baptism and sacrament prep process for their child from the start, it's likely they'll be good partners with you on the rest of the journey as well. If there are students in the children's catechumenate, it's encouraged for schools and teachers to really think creatively about ways to lift up and validate the journey of the students in the children's catechumenate and all the students in the class. Try to consider ways to honor the students in the children's catechumenate with the whole class, with ways, for example, like having a little party, a little pizza party and a little cupcake party never hurt anybody, and everybody likes a party, to engage students in celebrating each other as kids who are participating in the children's catechumenate reach certain milestones in their journey. You might pray a special blessing for all of the children and invite the children to bless one another as they continue to move through their preparation processes. You can invite all the children to talk about their faith journey and to share experiences of their love and their closeness to God, and give children a chance to witness their faith to one another, which can be pretty powerful. Just finding ways to uplift and celebrate all of the students validates all of the kids in the place that they're at in their formation. And then finally, try to be radically hospitable. Just go out of your way to invite new families to parish and school events, and not just mass all the time. There's other family-friendly parish and school events that go on that might be of interest to a new family, like a potluck, or as Lent is approaching, Stations of the Cross, or a fish fry, or a picnic, or bingo, whatever that might happen to be. All of this can really help new families meet other families who are part of the parish and school community, and help those new families set down some roots in the community and feel really included. And then when it's time for students in the children's catechumenate to receive their sacraments, consider doing it at a time when their peers can be present to really celebrate with them and pour out all that love and support all over them with each other. If a parish or a school gave a gift to the other children who are kind of traditionally preparing for their sacraments, be sure to give a gift to the kids in the children's catechumenate as well, and just celebrate with like overwhelming, exceptional joy and community the sacramental life of students and their families. Their reception into the church is truly an opportunity for ongoing engagement and support and continuous community as they dive deeper into their discipleship. And we know in our ministries, it's a real gift to accompany them in that space. Great.
And then also we want to really encourage you to refer to the guide to adapting the RCIA for children. This is a great book. It offers not only some best practices and tips to help you with your program, but then some more, logistical, how do I structure the program and things like that. So this is a really helpful resource that we encourage you to use. Included in there as their best practices, even as Melissa was mentioning, inviting, sponsoring families to get involved in the process to help to build relationships throughout the parish, that type of thing. And then also, maybe you'd want to invite some already baptized peers to participate occasionally in the initiation session so that there's some overlap between the classroom and then the catechumenate program as well. But this program, this book, outlines more tips and best practices for you. We also, one of the questions that we had asked was, what were some successes that you've seen in your programs? And so here's a few things that people had mentioned, great teamwork with catechists, and that is critical, as we know. So, if you can have a team to help you with your children's catechumenate, that'll go a long way. Also creating a specific set of guidelines and a time frame for the reception of sacraments. As we've said, this will be very parish specific, but if you created your specific set of guidelines and had this clearly mapped out with for your parish and communicated it early with parents, that would go a long way in helping with clear communication. Someone else said flexibility and having a lot of on-ramps. I mentioned earlier, the kids keep popping up all throughout the year. So by having a lot of on-ramps and flexibility, you can, find some success with your program there. There's a few more on there. The family-oriented programs are wonderful. So if you have a great team that you can work with to build that up, that would be good as well. And then people found success with the one-on-one and small group discussions, relationship building. And then also being able to walk alongside with a family. And then rituals. The rituals work. They really draw people into the beauty of our Catholic faith. So don't be afraid to celebrate the rituals. And then someone also said their greatest achievement has been to provide formation to parents, godparents, and unbaptized children at the same time.
Hey, Deb.
Yes.
I just want to jump in here real quick. I mean, I'm looking at, even the comments that we got from the registration, but even the best practices that we had put together from that one resource, and then there were the other resources listed. The one thing that just keeps coming up, and we touched on it already, but it's how much emphasis is given to the working together in any parish and school. That the religious ed director, the principal, and the RCIA director need to know each other. They need to work together in these, and between them all, of course, with the pastor, the process can be implemented according to the needs of the parish, the students, the families. Again, just how adaptable it is.
Wonderful, thanks.
We had mentioned a number of times that this resource was based on the already existing policies and procedures of the Archdiocese, which, by the way, I want to point another thing out. These aren't just policies of the Archdiocese, but our policies are according to the national norms. So every diocese has these same policies, and the global norms of initiating children. So you find them in Book 4, the Sanctifying Office of the Church, in section 100. It's the very first section of this book of our policies and procedures. It is an outline. It's not a step-by-step, as all of our policies are. They are outlined. They speak to Ministry of Children of Catechetical Age, the confirmation of children of catechetical age, and the reception of children of catechetical age into the full communion of the Catholic Church. And if you're not aware, these you can get them online. They're on the Archdiocesan website. In the upper band, it says About Us. That's where you'll find, you can print them out. They're in a PDF. This resource and this webinar will be presented in Spanish. So the document is being translated at this time, and a similar walkthrough in Spanish is going to be scheduled for mid-March. If any of you, I know Margie, Lori is here, you guys and others I know, you're just not on my screen, who work intimately with the RCIA, you know that's what my office does in close collaboration with Lifelong Formation. You should feel comfortable reaching out to me, either sending me an email, giving me a call. My ministry is to work with parishes and schools and religious ed programs in the area of initiation. And so my email is there. Melissa and Deb, throughout this whole process, we've had the similar mindset of That's what we're here for. So from this, if other questions come from this this presentation and the resource, even after today, please get in touch with us. We'll help you. We'll help you develop a catechumenal process. We'll give you resources that will be of help.
So before we open up the floor for questions, we thought we might just address some of the questions that came up in the pre-survey. So Todd will go through some of these and provide some answers for you now. And then after that, we'll just go right into Q&A.
Yeah, because some of these we actually already have addressed. We have already clarified what age of reason is. It is about 7, but that's discernible. And it should be discernment among the pastoral leadership in the parish and the school. The 2-year, the formats and processes for tracking students in the resources that we mentioned, and there are others, they do address that. The requirement for 2 years of sacramental preparation, that came up a couple of times. We thought it was worth addressing here. The archdiocesan policies require 2 years of preparation only for confirmation. Somehow it's gotten out that it's for any sacrament, but that's specifically spelled out only for confirmation. The RCIA, by the way, the RCIA does, I know not many parishes are in compliance, but the RCIA itself, the bishops of the United States have said, should last at least 1 year, several if necessary. And so that whole idea of the RCIA being the fast track is not quite accurate, I don't think. So the RCIA process itself calls for an extended period of preparation. It would be in compliance with that policy of the Arch. Do we have a suggested model for children and teens? No, that's what I meant when we said it's highly adaptable. Is there a better adaptation for the framework for children? There is an adaptation. And as I said, those resources that we already mentioned will help you with that. Is it mandatory to implement the new formation process for unbaptized children in all parishes? These are our policies, as we've said a number of times. Recommendations for materials, we already gave you those, and there are more if you need, and if you are aware of them, share them in the chat right now. Mary Ellen asked for some recommendations. If you have good resources that you have found helpful, put them in the chat right now for everybody. The guidelines, that's what these are. And then will the bishops be prepared for First Communion for older students? I'm going to have to do some footwork on that. I can't answer that question right now. They are, we continue to develop and address the confirmation of adults and older students. So there you are.
Great. All right. So we can now, we'll just address questions that are popping up in the chat. And then if anybody wants to either raise your hand or just come off mute and ask your question, go right ahead. It's just kind of, open floor.
Oh my gosh, breaking open the word, it's noted there, it's part of the process for a catechumenal process for adults. Yes, it can be most adaptable for youth as well. Journey of Faith is an excellent resource. It's I would also add Foundations in Faith is an excellent resource for adults, and they have resources for RCIA adapted for children as well.
I think Dolly has her hand up.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, we continue to have a lot of older children, both baptized Catholic and baptized in other faiths, that are presenting, that are very delayed in the traditional track. We've just been going on a case-by-case basis, but at some point there does seem to be an age where those sacraments need to be received together, Eucharist and confirmation. Do you guys have any guidelines on what that best age is to consider for that? Or at what age does it quit being a catch up? And at what age do you suggest really having them do RCIA kind of prep? And then the other situation is with students who's, particularly in high school, although I have encountered it in a grade school, where the parents aren't necessarily on the same page. A lot of times we are presented with high school students who are interested in becoming baptized and the parents are not on board or guardians are not on board. We do our best to walk with those students until they're 18 and can make that choice on their own. But then oftentimes in reverse happens in a school situation where the parents are like, they can do it, but the parents aren't desirous of being Catholic. So in those situations, we do our best to accompany them, make sure they have good godparents and sponsors, have that support network that will support them in that. But when those strong parental pieces aren't in place, it seems like we would almost be better off to have some different guidelines, because most of these guidelines are geared towards situations where the parents are fully on board and in place.
Let me jump in there first, Deb and Melissa, and then if you want anything to add. You know, it's, Dolly, I think what you said is undeniable. In many, many cases, sacramental prep and celebration is messy. I mean, it is. It's part. They just are. They're not neat, and nor should they be. These are profound moments in our lives, and they need the support of parents and guardians. Sometimes I think we think of, an answer isn't no, but it's not yet. And there might be some wisdom there, even in terms of sacramental preparation. Deb or Melissa, do you want to add anything?
No, I didn't have anything.
But at present, you guys are not recommending that anybody that is clearly at the age of reason and delayed should be receiving Eucharist and confirmation together. I know at one point Diocese of Joliet was pushing towards that, but it does not seem like the Archdiocese of Chicago is there. We can still keep them separate until an age we determine they really need to be in an RCIA process.
Deb, or Dolly, I'm really sorry. Ask me that question in another way. I'm not.
So
if they're unbaptized, you cannot defer baptism, confirmation, and Eucharist.
correct. I'm talking about those students who are baptized Catholic or into another faith that come to us.
Gotcha.
We frequently have people baptized in another faith where the one parent is Catholic and the other parent is not. And so they were baptized wherever to make grandma happy. And then suddenly they figure out when the kid is like 12 or 13, we never did what we were supposed to do. We want them to have first communion and confirmation. Diocese of Joliet was working towards a thing that said, once you reach a certain age, you need to reunify those sacraments. It's not just prepare for first communion and get first communion and then prepare for confirmation and get confirmation. So is there an age that you are recommending as the guideline that is too late to be quote unquote catch up, to just prepare for reconciliation and communion and then later prepare for confirmation?
We don't, we are not working or moving towards that in terms of making it the level of policy. And so right now they would be separate. They would be separate
Okay.
Preparations, yeah.
So up until 8th grade, it's fine to keep them separate. After 8th grade, if our confirmation is typically in 8th grade, up until 8th grade, keep them separate. After 8th grade, prepare for them together.
Well, if they are non-Catholic, then all of that is done when they are received into the full communion of the church. No matter what age, no matter what age. For Catholics, I would defer to Deb here.
I'm sorry,
I-
I'm really confused. I know, Deb, you're going to jump in, but I thought the document says that as of the age of reason, once they reach the age of reason, even if they're Catholic, they receive Eucharist and confirmation at the same time.
This resource doesn't address that, Mary Ellen.
It doesn't?
No, not Catholics. This resource is specifically for non-baptized students, children, and baptized non-Catholics. This resource is not for Catholics.
I'm sorry, I forgot she said it was for Catholics. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're saying it's okay if they want to pace them out. So if they're in 4th grade and they want to receive Eucharist, they can receive Eucharist, but wait until confirmation to receive confirmation.
If they're Catholic.
If they're
Not, if they're not Catholic, if they're not baptized Catholic. So even if one parent is Catholic, but they were baptized into another faith, they're saying that they should receive them together.
They are to receive them together. That's the rite of reception. It includes confirmation and Eucharist at the same time, at that moment. There's a question here about high schoolers presented in the RCIA process. Yes, oh my gosh, yes, high schoolers are the age of reason, yes. So if they're not baptized Catholic, they would be received, confirmed, and receive the Eucharist all at the same time. If they are not baptized at all, they would be part of an RCIA catechumenal experience.
Patrick, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. A scenario, because this just came up after we had the webinar on the 15th, and this came up last week, and family came in. Child is 9 years old, was not baptized. Okay, and they want communion. Now, as a 9-year-old, if he goes through the child framework of RCIA, he would receive, say, if it takes more than a year, he would receive at the Easter Vigil his baptism, his confirmation, and his communion. Correct?
Correct.
Now, we have students in our religious ed who were baptized as infants, receiving their communion in their 2nd grade and receiving their confirmation in their 8th grade. So this is almost like doing a fast track. I know it's probably not the right word, of having this child who was not baptized to be fully received by the time he's 11, where we are having children going through every grade, hopefully from 1st grade to 8th grade, to receive all the sacraments. Okay. Yep. Yeah, but
and there's the messy part, right?
Exactly. That's a huge messy part. That is huge.
It's messy, but it's not insurmountable, Patrick.
No, I know it's not insurmountable, but how does it look to the parents who are putting their students through religious education for 8 years, waiting to receive, to have them receive the confirmation in the 8th grade, and yet this child can receive his confirmation in the 6th grade?
That's part of the problem when we set it up, that religious education equals getting a sacrament, right? And
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
we've done that to ourselves. I hold, and I've seen it, where if the families are prepared of that unbaptized student, if it's a true accompaniment and journey,
Mhm.
and it is about faith development and conversion, then that student remains in religious ed. And guess what? When it's time to prepare for confirmation, that student who's already been confirmed, they do all of the process and projects as well. They do the saint report as well. They do the service hours as well, because it's part of their continuing formation. And
Okay.
on the night of confirmation, they dress up, they get their own pew with their family, and they go up to the bishop, who won't confirm him or her, but receives a special blessing, takes part in all the preparation and the celebration.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
Elizabeth, did you have a question?
Okay, I have a question. So we, don't know how to ask this without sounding bad, but it seems a little torturous to ask some of these young people to sit through the entire Easter Vigil. That's a long mass for them. And so I'm wondering if there is any sort of process or differentiation for some of these young kids who, 9, 10, 11, that's a long mass for them. That's a long mass to sit through. And the reason why I'm asking this is not just for boredom's sake, but for keeping that reception of the sacraments and keeping that joy with them and understanding what's going on. It's hard for them to stay focused for that amount of time. I'm wondering if there's any recommendations or things like that for how we can help these kids receive these sacraments in a really meaningful way for them, maybe outside of the Easter Vigil.
Okay, so I keep jumping in, Deb and Melissa, shut me up if you need to. I know there are people in this meeting right now who have done a great job of preparing young children to celebrate the Easter Vigil. And I'm not going to call anybody out, Lori or Margie, but and David, I think you can prepare a child for a long mass and do it in a way that they look forward to it, and that it is a kind of celebration that you just described. As long as there is the preparation of the parents and the child for the Easter Vigil. This night is so important. This night is so special. And look what you're going to do on this night that is so special. I think it can be done.
Thanks, Todd.
Yeah.
David, did you have a question? I saw your hand up earlier.
I was commenting earlier when we were talking about the difficulty of, the issue of the fast track, and then the kids who are working through 8th grade to be able to get it. And I think Todd really covered it well. We have to divorce sacraments from the process of growing as disciples of Jesus, right? That process of growing as a disciple is lifelong. And when we put sacraments at the end of a preparation program or anything like that, it creates this false idea that the sacrament is the reward or what you earned for it. But I would say the success I've experienced in the RCIC and kids who receive all of the sacraments at 2nd grade, and yet they are still receiving the same religious education, accompanying their peers, whether it be in the school or an RE, through the rest of their childhood and adolescence, is really, I think, the goal that I've experienced a lot of benefit from. And that I appreciate the presenters today talking about the information and the communication that has to happen with parents prior to any sacrament. And that includes a conversation I have with every kid who is non-Catholic and they're going to be received into the church, or non-baptized and they're baptized at the Easter Vigil. I say your child's religious education is going to continue, and we expect to see them in the confirmation preparation. They're not going to be confirmed, but they're going to go through it with their peers in 7th and 8th grade. And as long as that expectation is set up beforehand, it becomes less of an issue of who got fast-tracked and who didn't. And knowing that these celebrations happen at different times in the moments of their life, but religious education is constant and throughout a child's development.
That's the voice of experience. Very well said.
Yes, thank you. That was helpful. I know there have been some comments in the chat. If you just want to make sure to check those out about the bishops not being prepared for the special blessing for the youth, but then there are a couple of examples of where the bishop, you can make sure that they're aware and prepared for that. So if anybody has questions, but there were some nice responses there for that.
Yeah, see, helping each other out. There are great successes in this chat room right now, and just the point on the importance of sharing them to help each other out.
Todd, we did that at the adult confirmation we had this past year. we had an adult who had made her sacraments, but because of the complications in her life, it was almost like she erased those. And so she went through the whole process with the other adults, and then I talked with the bishop and explained the situation. And when it came time to come to her, he gave her a special blessing, and we gave her a certificate that said that she had been blessed by the bishop on this day. And she was just so moved that we did this for her. Because we could have said, hey, you've already been through all this. And we said, no, come to the class and do everything with everybody. And the bishop had no problem doing this at all.
Excellent. Fantastic.
And Elizabeth Koss had a great point in the chat as well. She said, this is the model for spread. Much of the catechesis for the sacraments occurs after the reception of them. So, this is common elsewhere in our churches.
It's called mystagogy.
There you go.
It's Mystagogical Catechesis.
I will echo what David said, and just that the accompaniment is so important. Having experienced this with families, a lot of times, especially around 6th grade, the children get very rebellious about wanting to continue to come, especially once they've already been confirmed. Unless you've developed that relationship with the family or have somebody who's developed that relationship with them, it's very difficult to explain to them why they need to keep coming, because they think they know everything at that age. So it's really important, having been through that, to be able to sit down with the child and say, look, we talked about this. I still don't know everything there is to know about God. So how can you? And they can, lean into that and accept it. So when you have these situations with older children going through Rcia, making sure that they have somebody that's going to continue to accompany them through their formation is the biggest key.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Most definitely. Thanks, Dolly.
Yes.
I have 2 questions. One is in regards to the breaking open the word. I know we do it religiously with the adults where we do the dismissal and stuff, but is there any hard or fast rule that we can't adapt that for the young people to some degree? Not do it every single Sunday? Todd, what is your?
So for just to make sure everybody knows what we're talking about, for those who are unbaptized, there is the norm of dismissing at Sunday Mass, dismissing those who are not baptized after the homily. And there's some very specific reasons for that. They are not yet baptized. It is not yet their right, their duty, or their salvation to lift up their hearts to the Lord in the celebration of the Eucharist that follows. That's the duties and the rights and the responsibilities of the baptized. And so they are dismissed. Now that's for adults, and the rite says, unless for a very serious reason, they cannot be dismissed. So obviously, it's important, right? For children, I think that would be a discernment, Mary Ellen. But if they're being dismissed once a month, why wouldn't you dismiss them every Sunday of the month as well? So I always, when rights and documents use words like unless for a serious reason, I really err on the side of, okay, it's pretty clear what the church is calling for us to do. So I wouldn't see any reason why not to dismiss them.
Can I jump in real quick? We did what we did with our 2 young girls who were not baptized. They went to the liturgy of the word with children every Sunday to break open the word, and then the kids talk about it with the adult. So they went to that every Sunday because it was at their level. So if you have children's liturgy of the word, you can use that as part of that process for these particular children.
So excellent idea. Remember, these are It really is. We're limited only by our own creativity in terms of how to handle these pastoral situations. Lori, that was a great way to combine them.
Yeah, we don't send them with the adults. I mean,
Right.
that wasn't the issue. And then my second question was, I guess it was almost for Melissa, is that Melissa, I know, I think sometimes, and I won't say I'll speak for everybody here, but I know there's a lot of conflict and tension sometimes between school and parish on this issue. Sometimes, school leaders don't always understand the full process, and they're like, but they don't, it's like, well, we don't want to leave anyone out, or we don't want to alienate the family because we made them feel unwelcome for being non-Catholic or something. You addressed all of that with the inquiry form and everything else. In my situation, I do find that often they don't know they want it until they want it in second grade. If we were to wait till third grade, some of them have waited. And some of them waited and done it in third. Some of them were less interested in third grade. So we don't know what's in someone's heart, and I don't presume to know that. But I think it's really challenging from a parish school. It creates tension. So I guess I'm hoping Melissa is really going to be hammering this home on the school side. I know everyone is invited today, but we really need some collaboration on that end, because, it's just really challenging. It's really challenging. That's all I'm saying, is that sometimes to get that early, like you're suggesting, it's a great intention. We have a form that goes out with our school at the time they enroll in the school, but we don't, no matter how much you ask, and we've asked the first graders several times this year and we have got no one, but we all know I'm going to have 6 or 7 next year. So it's really important the school understands how integral they are in this process, and that we're not trying to alienate and point out the non-Catholics. We're not trying to, but we need to have a dialogue about this. First of all, it's the part of the evangelizing mission of our schools. But so we need everybody in on this, and I hope in their school meetings that the OCS is going to be doing that. So Melissa, yes, no, are you going to be reaffirming?
Well, I'm glad that you named it, Mary Ellen, because it's true that there's tension in a lot of communities because there's strong leaders everywhere. So sometimes strong leaders, have different approaches to leadership, and then that results in tension. But I'm very grateful that you named that exists, and also that we can't presume to know what's in people's hearts and minds. Yeah. So it's true, we can do an intake form, and that's a great step to having some first conversations in partnership with the school and the parish and the RCIA director and the pastor in the community as early as preschool, as students are coming in and their families are naming their religious identity and, sharing a little bit about their background. The schools can open up some conversation and talk about the pathway towards sacramental prep that their students can be invited to participate in. But yeah, this is a webinar that's certainly going to be shared out with school leaders, and those conversations continue to happen. I'm not sure that some of our school leaders understand fully that the school is there to assist and to lead preparation for a sacrament, and it's the parish's role to administer that sacrament and to provide the guidance about how that preparation should look. So I think if our school leaders understand that more fully, they might actually breathe a sigh of relief, knowing that they don't have to have all the answers, and they shouldn't have all the answers, because our schools take the guidance from their parishes and how their parishes are envisioning that formation to take place, and then the schools provide the formation at the guidance of the parish. So you're right. Those are all conversations that we need to continue to have with our school leaders. We typically have about 25 to 30 new school leaders each year as people retire and we onboard new principals. So it's not a one-time conversation. It's an ongoing conversation that we can continue to have and should continue to have more directly with our school leaders as we do good collaboration with our parishes.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Okay, Angela, I see you have your hand up, and then after you, Mary Ellen Castleman.
Just a quick question. I don't know for whom. Parish, how do you identify that in this sacramental process? Because there was something that as you were going through, you said, oh, you do the process, and then they receive these sacraments at their home parish. Right now, we have totally gone to, many parishes sharing a school, or a school in a particular region, or a whole region that's not even served by a school, the whole southeast portion, suburban portion of the arch, for instance. How do you where are they supposed to receive the what is defined as home parish? The school, where the place where they're at school, or the place where they attend Sunday liturgy?
We were just talking about this the other day and saying, okay, what happens in these scenarios? I would say where the family attends Sunday Mass. That is their home parish. That's where they're registered as parishioners. That's where the sacramental reception should take place. So Melissa or Todd, I don't know if you have any more than that.
No, I would completely agree with you. It would be the home parish. Now, Angela, part of the problem, I would imagine, is that in a regional school, you have a child that's not baptized, whose family has no affiliation, faith affiliation, and so there is no home parish. That's where that would be a unique and a great pastoral opportunity, I would think, that for school leadership to maybe guide them to a faith community. But definitely, as Deborah said, if they've got a home parish, that's where it would be.
Okay, Mary Ellen Kesselman.
Thank you. My question and comment are for Melissa. I'm curious, when a family registers their children into a Catholic school and they are baptized, isn't that part of the registration process, is to submit a baptismal certificate, even if they're not Catholic?
That's a good question. And that's what kind of provoked some of the conversation around this at principals council meetings, because it varies from school to school. Okay. So it's not necessarily true that a school would request a baptismal certificate. And it's not necessarily true that a school has an intake form like the one that we've shared and discussed in this resource, which is what leads to assumptions and leads to, disappointments among families and kids when, second grade rolls around and those conversations haven't happened in collaboration with the parish and the families. So because the registration is different at each place, what we're trying to do is to give schools and parishes this kind of tool to formalize as part of their registration, some sort of, understanding about a student's sacramental background. So on the front end, we can build a relationship with new families and accompany them as they make choices for their child. But yeah, the registration process differs from school to school.
Okay. I have worked now in my current ministerial capacity with 3 different principals of the parish school, and each one of those experiences have been very different. And I think, to Mary Ellen's point, the other Mary Ellen, developing that relationship with, as Todd said, the RCIA director and the school principal is really, really key. And I'm finding out, and now we don't have an RCIA director, but between our deacon and the principal and myself, this is where we're finding these loopholes of, well, I didn't realize you didn't ask them for a baptismal certificate. No wonder I'm having such a hard time getting them to record sacraments, especially from first grade parents or second grade parents. And we also have these other scenarios where it was at one point assumed that if a child enrolled as a second grader into the Catholic school and that they were baptized, that they would have adequate formation by the time, reconciliation reception rolled around, or by the time Eucharist reception would roll around. It was just an assumption because the school somehow or other miraculously forms children faster than religious education. So again, having dialogue and finding out these things and then working out, well, how are we going to address this? And it's always been my practice to either bug Todd or go back to the document and then bug Todd. Because it's just, just trying to find out what are the parameters, the guidelines, and then trying to figure out, okay, where does the pastor sit on all of that? And that's always the key, is the pastor can do, what the pastor does. So that's another component that we have to kind of, as CLs, we have to kind of pray to the Spirit on an awful lot. Thank you all for all of this. This has been fabulous.
Thanks, Mary Ellen. Elizabeth, I see your hands up.
I have two more questions, and to what Mary Ellen was just saying, we have recently discovered also in the school that parents will sometimes say that they're Catholic or say that their students are Catholic because they think it's going to affect whether or not they get in to the school.
Mm-hmm.
So they say that they're Catholic and they're really not. So, so then we kind of have to tease that out as well. So it's sometimes a little more complicated than just having them fill out a form and check Catholic or not check Catholic, because, they're worried about getting into the school. So that's always fun too. But I have two questions. One of the questions is that I frequently get pushback from families who believe that this preparation for the sacraments must occur during school hours.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't be asked to come after school or at a different time for sacramental preparation, because that's why they go to a Catholic school. So I think that that's probably a little bit more of a Melissa question. But the other thing we didn't touch on that was in the document that I was really curious about was how we are, as an archdiocese, addressing the fact that we have non-Catholics in our schools who do not want to receive the sacraments, are happy with their faith choices. But we're not really changing the way we teach religion class. We're focused on what that is, but we're not really addressing the fact that a lot of the people who are hearing it, or more and more people who are hearing it, are not actually Catholic. So those are kind of my twofold question.
They sound like questions for me. So thanks. That's totally new to me, that people would check that they're Catholic when they're not. That's fascinating.
Oh yeah.
It's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, you have to get a special confession for that.
So
I've also had, just to piggyback real quick, Elizabeth, families who are of the Orthodox tradition.
Oh yeah.
That the school will automatically say, oh, they're not Catholic. And it's like, wait a minute. Yes, they are, depending on which church they are affiliated with and where their relationship is with the Roman Church. So it gets very complicated. I have one of those going on right now, which is very, very messy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think to speak to Elizabeth's twofold question, the first one about the sacramental prep hours only being during school hours and that being kind of a demand of parents. I'm assuming that's for kids who are like in 3rd or 4th grade, where typical sacrament prep isn't going on in kind of the traditional years.
Yes.
So I would imagine it would require a gentle conversation with a trusted person at the school and the parents and the parish staff to talk about how formation can happen in the school, but it's at the discretion of the parish about how that needs to happen for the preparation of a student, outside of 2nd grade, and outside of 7th and 8th grade, whatever the case might be. Because at the end of the day, and we know, and as we've discussed, that is at the guidance of the parish, and if the parish has indicated that this is necessary for a student outside of school hours, then we support that as a school community. And we want to celebrate that in the classroom as the students are preparing and recognize that students are doing, this outside of classroom work. It's helping with their formation, and we want to uplift those students, as much as possible within the school setting, knowing that students are doing that good work outside of school too, because the process is different. And so parents don't understand that. They have a hard time understanding that. And so it might take a few gentle conversations, I would imagine, to help impress that upon families. And I'm sorry, I can't be more helpful with that question. It's just, it's a hard thing to talk to parents who might have a difficult time understanding. But for the second part of the question, I'm very excited because we have a new set of curriculum standards that Deb was particularly helpful with. Our offices collaborate pretty closely. And so Deb and I are partners in really discerning pathways for curriculum and instruction and engaging students in formation. And she was a great partner in outlining new curriculum priority standards for school students. They're being implemented this year. And so regardless of whether or not a student's being formed for a sacrament in second grade, seventh grade, or eighth grade, our teachers are being given some professional development, some continuing formation around how to teach students in a diverse religious setting. We've engaged the Office for Ecumenical and Interreligious Affairs staff in some professional development for our teachers about how to do that with integrity. Because it does take a shift in their pedagogy about how to instruct. We're not just a banking system of here's your stuff, now you repeat it, and now you're Catholic. But really, how do we engage all of our students, regardless of their formation background and their personal identity, with understanding what it means to be Catholic and inviting them into that experience of journeying as a disciple of Jesus Christ. And that's new for a lot of our teachers. And it's going to take some time, but we are trying to be intentional about a process for really walking with our teachers.
And you said that started this year, as in it's going to start this fall, or they've already started working on it?
They've already started. So they're in the first year of teaching new curriculum.
Excellent. All right, so I'm seeing that we're just about at 5 o'clock. So, I want to be mindful of everyone's time. I guess if there's any last kind of pressing question that you want to ask here, or like we mentioned, you can contact Melissa, Todd, or myself anytime with other questions. But are there any last burning questions that anybody wanted to ask? Okay, we hope this has been helpful. I know, there are a lot of questions. We've given some answers. We've given some vague, partial answers. So hopefully it's been helpful. Todd, do you have some last comments?
I agree completely with what you said. And just everybody, Melissa and Deb and I, throughout planning this webinar, this town hall, we just kept saying, how can we be the most helpful? How can we be the most helpful? So Melissa mentioned this early on, but thank you for all you do for the families and the people in your parishes.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Okay, have a good night, and we will send out the recording link probably within the next week or so. So then you'll be able to share that. So thank you.
Thank you.